Peyton. Nice to see you again on this beautiful day. Well, I don't see you because of the bandwidth, but
At least you can smell me.
at least that one technology came far. Back from the retreat with two quotes from the Buddha. Peace comes from within. Do not seek it without. The second one, no one can save us but ourselves. No one can and no one may. We ourselves must walk the path. So, what do you think about this responsibility that we seemingly have in the opinion of the Buddha?
I think this is a great reminder because the world is constantly conditioning us to seek our peace, to seek our happiness, to seek our well being from outside us rather than within. And I can say personally that I fall victim to this illusion all the time, where I think that if only this person was this other way, then I would have more peace. Or if only I wasn't in this situation, then I would be free or happier. If only this other thing in the outside world was true, then that would make me feel joy. And it's deceiving, it's constantly repeated, or at least the framing of this perspective and this approach to trying to satisfy all of the desires that we have for the outside world to constantly chase this of psychological well-being. It's a treadmill that never ends. If we look back at our life so far and all the things that we wanted over the years, where are they now? In other words, we are living in a house that one time we wanted. We are working a job that one time we wanted. We are in some relationship that one time we wanted. We drive the car that one time we wanted. And then we went and got all these things. And then once we got them, we soon moved the goalposts. And when we inspect this, and when we see the past things that we didn't want, that eventually we did shuck off, yes, there was some relief we experienced from it, but were they ultimately satisfying? Did they completely and permanently quench our thirst for all of the feelings and well-being that we sought? No, they came, they went, or at least the emotional impact of them came and went. They weren't ultimately satisfying. Seeking peace within, on the other hand, is a different equation. It's one that we're tempted to overlook entirely or not even view as a factor among the problems. And I'm speaking absolutely for myself in this, and much more than I care to admit, I'm speaking about myself even in this past week or two on seeking peace from without by wanting things in the external world to be different than how they are, and completely overlooking by doing so my own agency over my mind, or the most powerful toolkit that we are given to actually find and enjoy peace and well-being in this life, which is looking within, which is actually addressing the problems of our mind on the level of our mind directly by looking at our thoughts, emotions, well-being, awareness, and connection with the now, and actually addressing them on their own level where they can be solved, they can be remedied, but not by just resisting reality more or craving external things to change more. Speaking of the looking for peace within, what does that look like for you? How do you think that we can or should think about actually finding peace in a way that works when we find ourselves lacking?
Beautiful. Peace comes from within. What I discovered in the 10-day meditation retreat that I joined recently is that heaven or hell both are here in our minds and start from within our minds. Like, it is in our choice, it is in our ability to choose whether we want to cultivate heaven on earth or whether we want to fall prey to what hell has to offer. And what I mean by that is we actually can reach a state of internal satisfaction, of internal coolness, where we do not crave for more, where we not desire stuff much more than what a natural life would offer. Like, if we don't crave for more food than we can eat just because it tastes good, then we just eat enough for us to be satisfied and to maintain this body and to be healthy. But if we eat too little, we die. If we eat too much, we also have more problems with our health later on, probably. So not only with food, it's also with our thinking. If we just long for what we already have, then it's like a completeness in itself, then we have enough in itself. And this is probably the thing which leads to the insight that peace emerges from within. Because if you reach a state through practice, through meditation, for example, through relaxation or through random insights, I don't know how, but you can make it more likely if you sit down and meditate for a while and connect with nature or have a profound mystical experience. You have like this internal satisfaction where you don't long for even more. So what is it actually? Why do we travel, or why do we crave so much for stuff? Actually, I think because we seek for a change of our internal state, or a change of the environment, which leads to a change of our internal state. It leads to new inputs, leads to new pathways in our brain getting activated. And if we crave for maybe a candy, then we eat it and we crave for this kind of rush which the sugar gives us. And it's like this internal state that leads to our temporary satisfaction. But then the problem is, if that stuff comes from the outside, like bait, like sugary stuff, like cigarettes, like alcohol, booze, whatever. It's like bait, because you only have the satisfaction for a very short period of time. But then, because you long for another kick, another rush, and you want it again. So you're hooked on the bait. And there is the opposite of that. Like the antithesis is real stuff, real food, real experience. Where does our real experience begin then? It's like in the present moment, because everything we have in our sensory input we can be aware of. Even not only our sensory input, but also just our thoughts. And if we think about stuff, we do it probably very unconsciously all the time. And then we get hooked in the bait of our stories, which make us angry, for example, which make us grieving, which make us sad, maybe. It's just to involve us into our internal narratives, and our identity is involved in this as well. So from the inside, actually, if we are aware of all the stories we tell ourselves, if we are aware of all the sensory inputs which come, then we find the connection again to the one who observes, to the observing entity, actually, because it's not us who's thinking, it's not us who's experiencing. There is no division between me and you and the environment and the surroundings anymore. It's more like a state, an internal state where you don't long for change because it's complete in itself. So this is what I would describe the peace that comes from within. This is also probably what Jesus referred to when he said, "Is close, repent or change directions, because the heaven you seek is very close, just one breath away." What do you think about that, Peyton?
Yeah, he even in Luke 17, he even says that the kingdom of heaven is within you, which I think is such a clear teaching. And I totally agree with what you say. It's remarkable how easy it can be to spot certain addictive tendencies and recognize their cause and effect. For example, drinking alcohol. All of us have consumed alcohol at some point, and many of us have made the comment that it's kind of like you're borrowing happiness from the next morning. You do this thing and it gives you this psychological effect, and you have this rebound where you pay for it. You have this withdrawal effect and this lowering of your baseline dopamine as a direct consequence of this act, as well as you mentioned candy. And obviously we know that smoking cigarettes has a similar effect where it spikes your baseline dopamine, and then you have this lower baseline, this craving that you seek to remedy with more of the same. And when it's something on the outside, food or alcohol or cigarettes or whatever the case, vaping or these things, which are fine, by the way, I'm not judging any of those. What I'm saying is it's so much easier for us to spot those cause and effects when they're physical things done on the outside. But it's so much harder to spot, and therefore can be much harder to realize the ways that we are weaving ourselves in our own pattern of entrapment when we have the psychological tendencies that use actually oftentimes the exact same dopamine system, and perhaps just as powerfully. And here I'm talking about anger as a great example. I'm talking about craving, and craving in the form of greed, craving in the form of lust, and I'm talking about resistance, and as well as the various forms of complaining or victim mentality or grieving or whatever that can fall under resistance. And with these, starting with anger, just as a good example, it's said that anger has a poisoned root but a honeyed tip. And if we pay attention to our own experience of anger, on first impact, it actually tastes pretty delicious. There's some empowering energy that we feel. There's some self-righteousness that we might feel. There's this power, and I'm on the right side of things, and I have this life force flowing through me, or whatever. And there's reasons that we feel we have these emotions and these energies in us. But when we are soaking in them by repeating stories and living in our narratives in our heads, separating ourselves from the present moment, they are like these other physical, outside, hold a cigarette up to my mouth and smoke it kind of addictions, except they're so much more subtle, and we don't have to admit that they're going on even to ourselves a lot of times. And so the cause and effect of these, we have this delicious first impact of the dopamine hit or the feeling of empowerment or whatever the case may be. And then we then have the baseline spike, and then it goes back, and now the baseline is below baseline, just like if we were having some alcohol or a cigarette or whatever. And then we have the craving again. We have the craving for more anger. We have the craving for more of the stories that trigger more of this emotions that then causes the baseline to spike again, which then, of course, naturally has the consequence of causing it to fall once more and leaving us in more and more of the craving. And much of our psychological entrapments are like this. Even our ones for pleasure, our lust is like this, where if we have this first hit of it, it can taste really delicious and sweet. And obviously it's associated with pleasure. And so we can indulge it, we can feel this rush of dopamine, and then we can experience this craving that is heightened actually by the deficit that we feel after the dopamine spike has worn off. As well as resistance is like this. Complaining feels really nice at first to vent or get it off our chest, and then it leaves us more entrapped in this. The baseline level goes lower, and we crave more of it. And in all of these, in the anger, in the complaining, even in the lust, and in the greed for sure, these things can be associated with words, which can cause things to be more calcified, more solidified, more rigidified. And then following that, if we're in these cycles longer and longer, they become identities. And so the cycle of identity and narratives causing the emotion, which causes the spike, which causes the trough, which causes the craving for more, which causes us to repeat these narratives in our mind. And it gets us in these psychological and emotional vicious cycles that are completely natural and oftentimes societally conditioned. We see other people doing this. It seems to be the remedy. It feels good at first impact. And it's so easy to lose sight of the full cause and effect of these cycles and how ultimately we are the ones that are perpetuating this ride. And this is where this second quote comes in, that no one saves us but ourselves. No one can and no one may. We ourselves must walk the path. This is where I can sit here and complain about the ways that my life or my emotions are harmed by this or that situation or this or that person or this or that thing going on. And maybe I'll even be, quote, right. Maybe it would be very understandable that anybody in my situation would also be suffering from this same thing going on. But actually, that's not the same as taking agency over the situation and doing something positive about it, of fixing it. And so if I'm sitting here complaining about what's going on, or if I'm sitting here in one way or another, once again, even if it's completely, quote, understandable, perpetuating these vicious cycles of thoughts and emotions, I am the one that's paying the consequence. This is the 2,500-year-old way of saying that it is a single player game, our own mind. And so just having a good excuse for suffering is not the same as actually freeing ourselves from suffering. Just having a good reason and a justifiable reason why we are caught in these patterns of blindness is not actually worth the same as fixing the issue, as fixing the illness that, or at least temporarily, refusing to perpetuate the psychological afflictions that we are caught up in and in these vicious cycles. And this is where finding peace can be as much, or in my opinion, is much more about a not doing than it is a doing. We don't actually have to go and find something in the external world to be at peace. We don't actually have to go and get a ton of money to be at peace. We don't actually have to go and have a bunch of sexual peak experiences to be at peace. We don't actually have to go and win a bunch of fights to be at peace. All of these things we catch ourselves up in doing. We almost lose the script and forget why we wanted this thing in the first place, as the actual cycles of craving and wanting and desiring and the thoughts and emotions and narratives that spin each other up in an upward spiral on these things. They cause us to lose sight of the fact that the original reason I actually wanted this money was because I wanted to be happy. And actually the very overplaying and rehearsing in my brain of what I want and what I'm going to do with it and how I'm going to get it and how much I crave it and how good it will taste and this and that. I'm catching myself up in a psychological addiction. And the undoing of that, the letting go of that, is not a heroic strength achievement. It's not a massive feat that I am putting on my shoulders. It's not like going out and getting more of something. It's actually a letting go of our active habits, our active tendencies, our active psychological addictions that are continually separating us from these things, namely anything that answers to the name of desire and aversion, are separating us from the peace that is actually always already available for us here. We don't need to get something else in the external world to feel it or to connect with it. We need to let go of the things that we're constantly doing to divide ourselves from it. And so that's how I think these two things tie together. How do you think about this we alone must walk the path? What does that mean? It doesn't necessarily mean that we are at fault, but it does mean, I think, that we are responsible. How do you connect with that in your own path?
Correct. It's the responsibility we have for ourselves and our own salvation, so to say. And this is also like the promises the world religions have to the people or practitioners. There's a path to salvation. If you practice enough, if you believe enough, then you probably are freed from whatever there is you need to be saved from. So in Buddhism, there's a system is more likely is built on like a thing which works. In my opinion, it was more like an ancient healing place for nervous suffering, for example, for if your life was chaotic, better seek out some nature, better seek out some quietude, better retreat a little. And that is a very healing thing to do, to retreat into nature and to breathe a little and have some distance to the stuff which causes problems. And then in the philosophical teaching of Buddhism, some things that called the Four Noble Truths, which basically is that the Buddha says that there is suffering, that in life there's pains, there's dissatisfaction, and nothing stays the way that we want it to stay. So there's also a cause for that. There's attachment or desire or even ignorance of wanting things to be different than they are. But there's also the path to salvation, where suffering ends and it's inner peace and liberation. If you don't crave anymore, if you're not attached anymore, if you don't resist anymore to the impermanence of things, then you have freedom. It's like this coolness within yourself. Yeah. And also there's a way to do it. So, and he describes probably more like sitting meditation and mindfulness with breathing. So in the mindfulness part actually is also very good researched. And for sure, no one can be mindful for us. That's why we have the responsibility ourselves. We have to walk the path, because it is our internal system, it is our nervous system through which we experience the world, but also through which we experience the suffering, or through which we experience the bliss, or even the peace, or the freedom we have. So it is us, our nervous system. It's our system. We have to walk through that. Nobody can, with a machine or with an AI or whatever, nobody can do it for us. This is the thing of life. There is life, but also life includes pain. And life includes dissatisfaction or things which do not stay the way they have been. So we have to let go. We are alive, and that brings problems. So, but also we can circumnavigate most of the problems through being aware of our breath in this case, exploring the rest of our system, like our body, being aware of our sensations, maybe when eating, being aware of whatever stuff tastes like, or what happens in our system when we eat and when we taste, or when we think about eating something. there's also a response in our system. So it's about developing this insight into your own system and therefore gaining the awareness about how the things connect within you. And when you make it clear, you see the patterns. And if you see the patterns, you realize there's a way in which I behave that leads to me feeling more dissatisfaction than when I do it another way. Meaning, okay, if I crave for sugary baits, if I crave for quick hits, then afterwards I feel less fulfilled. I feel more empty. I feel like I crave for more. I don't get enough of it. And if you realize these connections, and we talked about knowledge, and that real knowledge is stuff which transforms you. And if you realize that stuff, if you gain these insights, it transforms your systems. You more and more think about what is kind of right for you and what is kind of not so right for your system to feel more peace. And this is always the optimization criterion of inner peace, which is not optimized for survival, for example. But in this philosophical system, nibbana or nirvana, where the craving ends, where suffering ends, this is the optimization criterion. So if you feel overwhelmed, this is an ancient method, actually. If you want to take responsibility for your own life, the Buddhism is an ancient method, a little bit anachronistic from time to time, but parts of it really work. So especially the mindfulness stuff. But you can also do it without any kind of philosophical systems surrounding it, with just the program of mindfulness-based stress reduction, which is also very rich in its results. If you have this 8-week program of being aware of your breath, being aware of your body, being aware of the food you eat, whatever, you will change your brain. Your system becomes the way you use it repeatedly. And with a high intensity, then your brain changes. Your brain becomes the way you use it over and over again. So use it in a more lively way, where you really try to be aware of your surroundings, of your thoughts. It will probably change you in a way that leads to wiser actions, because you know the patterns which are underlying, the cause and effect mechanisms which are underlying whenever you have a craving, whenever you want something, a change of internal state, whenever you want to have more satisfaction. And then you also get to know from time to time what is enough for you. What does it mean? What is enough food for you? What is enough travel for you? What is enough money for you? This insights lead to better actions,
And
wiser action.
recognizing the enoughness of something really is such a good way to let go of this constant posture toward experience of needing more, needing to change, needing different, needing this heightened kind of greed, go seek more of this from the outside cycle that is so natural to get ourselves swept up in. The last thing that I'd like to mention real quick about all of this as we talk about these ways that we are seeking to reclaim agency over the possibility of suffering in our lives, and the ways that we contribute to that and get caught up in these patterns that actually lead to that, even as they tell us that they are trying to save us from that, it is not a stain upon us for our whole lives if we find ourselves in these cycles of suffering, because all of us do at times. And this is the reason why these practices, these teachings are here, both from Jesus and from the Buddha. And Jesus uses the word Gehenna for when he was originally speaking of what's translated into the Greek as Hades, quite inaccurately, actually, and then into the English as hell. But the actual word that he used was Gehenna. And this was the Valley of Purification. This was the place outside of Jerusalem where basically they burnt the trash. And all of us pass through Gehenna during our lives. All of us fall into these temptations as human beings in the world, in our lives. And it's no accident. It really cannot be any other way that we find ourselves there from time to time. But according to Jesus, according to the Buddha, according to many of these traditions, suffering does have a purpose. We don't have to feel shitty about ourselves for ever landing there. Suffering is an opportunity. Suffering is what brings us to our knees, humbly seeking the divine once more, when we have lost our way, when we have lost our prioritization, when we have lost sight of who we actually are and why we're here and what the big picture is. Suffering is this unignorable alarm that's saying, hey, you're blind again. And it's the signal that we try to ignore, we might shove down for a time, but sooner or later, when it keeps knocking, it just will overcome us. And it's there to reorient us. Painfully, yes, but reorient us toward a wiser way of being, toward a connection, toward a relationship with the divine and the divine within, the light that all of us have, this peace and well-being that is always already available. We need woken up to this. At least I can say for myself, we need woken up to this again and again and again. And it's no accident that we feel this way. And it is ultimately, in the long run, our deepest sorrow, our deepest grief, our most intense anger and affliction. Oftentimes, these are what we need to happen at points of our lives, dynamically, not forever, but dynamically, to recalibrate us, to turn us around and say, hey, we have strayed from the path. We have missed the mark. And it is time to turn around and reorient ourselves toward the kingdom of heaven or toward nirvana and the light that is within us. And this is something that is, once again, it's conditioned, but it's easy to blame ourselves. It's easy to think that this should never happen to us because I have read this or I have tried this or I'm this kind of person or whatever. But it's not real. Like the truth is, this is our reality, and the hardest experiences that we face, the deepest pain that we face, these are an opportunity. And a lot of times, it's an opportunity to see that the first things that we try to solve it, the trying to change this person outside of me, trying to fix this thing in the outside world, trying to crave more of this or that thing that we think will bring us pleasure, trying to push away this or that thing that we don't like, that we think is bringing us turmoil. It almost needs to show us again and again that our strength is not enough. Our attempts to manipulate the external world to secure our well-being don't work, actually. At least they don't work for long. Our encounter with suffering and our first attempts to fix it that just make the problem worse. These are there as guides, as very abrasive signposts that more and more abrasively will kindly redirect us back toward a wiser view, toward the things that actually can solve, toward this relationship with our well-being, that it comes from within. It is not something to find from without, and that we ourselves must walk the path, that it's not good enough to have a good reason why we are miserable and to be miserable forever. Ultimately, we want to find and come back to and accept grace and cease some of the strength of these patterns that we have of seeking peace from without that ultimately divide us from this grace, from this peace, from this awakening. And I can say for myself that, in fact, this week, suffering came back online to re-show me some of these lessons once again. And my first attempts did not work of trying to solve this and find this peace in the outside world by craving or fighting more and to get more entrenched in anger and desire or craving and aversion. So this is, once again, a recalibration that I am coming back to accept, coming back to see what actually is the remedy that I need in my life. And I can say time and time again, the remedy that I need is not the one that I myself am capable of producing with my own efforts, with my own striving, with my own thinking, and with my own toiling. It is something that I must cease all of these things. I must let go of all of these conditioned patterns and habits and cycles in order to accept what is already here to be accepted. And so that is the recalibration that is before me even today, that I am trying to see more and more clearly, trying to come back to, and just this re-remembering, this straying, noticing we have strayed and coming back. At least right now, this is the character of my journey that I am doing my best imperfectly to walk, and that is what I'm going to try to do. How about you, my friend? What are your intentions for today or for this week?
Well, thank you very much for sharing yours. And as we see, agency is in our own hands. It's first being aware that we suffer maybe unnecessarily, and then be redirected and change directions and see that there's a better way to deal with things than being angry, than resisting whatever happened, than being attached to certain kind of narrative outcome or story. And then we can just start again and realize we got agency, we can walk a different path and take wise actions, those with a greater possibility of better, higher order consequences. So we can create heaven or the site where they burned the trash in Jerusalem, outside of Jerusalem, in our own mind, heaven and hell.
Yes.
It is born from our own mind. So this is also my intention, to constantly realize it again and again, kindly, to redirect myself with kindness and love. You know, it's like a puppy. You don't hate upon a puppy if it just curiously wanders around, explores a little bit, and bites into your pillow or whatever. You don't blame him. You are not angry. You just say, "Hey, come back here. Come back here." And you
Yeah.
just bring it back, just like that, with kindness. And same with you. Whenever we walk astray, whenever we see ourselves and witness ourselves not doing the stuff that we really want to do, that we aspire to do with our higher selves, then we just can think of ourselves as little puppies that we can kindly direct back to the path we envision for ourselves. So this is my intention. Think of myself as a puppy that I can act with myself with kindness.
I'm going to give myself some very good pats on the head if I do a good job today.
Good boy. Good boy.
Great reframing. I love that. Love that. Great, man. Well, I really enjoyed this conversation. As I mentioned, it's quite timely for me right now. I have a wonderful opportunity of recalibrating and coming back to some wisdom and good perspective and mindsets, behaviors, thoughts, and actions that will bear better fruit. And so I'm feeling inspired to do so, inspired to walk the path and to do my best and to accept myself like a little puppy when I inevitably stray and make my errors. So thank you for sharing. Really enjoyed this convo and looking forward to the next one.
Thank you very much, my friend. Looking also forward to it. Have a great week, man.
You as well. Take care.
Take care.